Hello, and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we switched from Festival Buddy 2 to Rich during the Buried Treasure event to finish adding that interactive map. That update has been pushed out to lotrointerface.com, but of course, it's going to be a couple more months before the next Buried Treasure event comes up. But it is available on day 0, day 1, when that festival starts. And hopefully it works as well for everyone else as it was for me at the end of that event. Today we're going to try to finish up Festival Buddy 2 changes before Yule starts this week. According to my notes here, that's just coming up on Thursday. So we have some time to finish up what we were doing during and after Harvest Math before actual Yule changes need to happen. As always, feel free to jump in chat with your thought and questions. And in the meantime, let me move some stuff around. Since the last time I was streaming, possibly since then, I've had an operating system upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11. So we're going to see if it causes any issues with the streaming. So let's go ahead and change over to the desktop view. So Yuletide starts on the 12th of December, which is convenient because regardless of how you read your dates, it is going to be correct. And that is this Thursday at 10 a.m. server time. And as always, the current year's event schedule can be found event schedule in the link that I put in the chat at lotro.com /news/lotro-public-event-schedule- your language code, in this case EN for English. Okay. I'm going to close that down now. So where were we? Well, we're over here on the Treebeard server, and the content has just been updated to include Palanir Fields and Far Anorian, and let's bring up a map. So moving out of Western Gondor to Central Gondor to Eastern Gondor, that was all. Oh, and into South Ithilien, Osgiliath, and Old Anorian. These were all available on Treebeard. And then last week we also got a release of the Battle of Pelennor Fields. So that happens in after battle. I wonder if I can navigate there. Gondor, Minas Tirith. Well, that's fascinating. Well, anyway, so the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and then you also have the Beacon Hills. Can I zoom out? Cool. Far Anorian, which includes the Beacon Hills, and I'm not sure I'm going to be comfortable pronouncing that correctly. And we're also going to go into North Ithilien and the Wastes up into the Black Gate, but not including Mordor. That's where Treebeard currently is. But I don't have a good place in Minas Tirith to go perch, and Minas Tirith is a much more complicated city to render than Dol Amroth is. So we're just going to stick here for right now until I get a better place to do some coding. So we're here in the city of Dol Amroth, which is mostly untouched by the war, as if you don't look in the harbor at the big ships that are blockading it. Okay, so we were looking at Festival Buddy 2. And what is that? Just for a review, in case anyone is unfamiliar, and Little Redhead was just mentioning this, is a little helper plugin designed to give you a little bit of extra information about different events that are happening. So for Yule, for instance, you can pop it up. It'll give you timers to show cooldowns for different events and guides for different quests. Show you where things are and remind you what to do with them. So Cold as Ice, where do you go? You pick up the quests in town, you go to the lake and disperse winter weather, and then you come back. Also, there are quick guides. So, if you are trying to complete a bunch of quests as quickly as possible, this guide is a way to do it. Certainly you don't have to follow it, but if you do, you will definitely get your 10 a day and probably some extra. But where we were was, well, let's take a look at our work in progress, our fork, which is a awkwardly named thing to search for online, but you can get this at fork.dev, I believe. Yep, fork.dev, and this is a UI that's wrapping around, in this case, Git. And that repository is backed to GitHub. So, what are we working on? We are playing around with the idea of adding unit tests for code that is otherwise a little bit tricky to test with different inputs. Unit tests just let you throw different inputs at a function and make sure that the function behaves correctly at a very granular level. And then there's higher level things you can do as well. So we can see we had some stuff in general functions. We have some commented out output here. More commented out output. Awesome. Don't have to worry about that right now. Let's see. Some code that we were in the middle of finishing when we switched over to do our unit testing. And then some more code. Awesome. So, general functions. Let's... Well, that looks like a comment more than anything else. Let's come into that. General functions. What's going on? Function will parsing a string into a number correctly based on the current locale. Okay, that's adding a comment. We'll go ahead and put that in. Added comment. Great. So, our basic unit testing framework, we can see time function tests. Awesome. Let's go look in tests. Time function tests. Oh, we already had that open. Awesome. So, these are the tests that we are writing over here. And the way this works is our testing framework is going to try to run the various tests whenever the plugin loads. We can see test function, test complete, passed to fail 0. That's very good to see. So we have a test runner, and this is just a very simple unit testing framework that we've kind of built from the ground up because the one that ships with the turbine files was a little bit confusing, and I wasn't ready to deal with that. But the goal of unit tests is that the framework doesn't matter so much. Each one is just a function, and it stands alone. So migrating to different unit test frameworks, our own homegrown one or a better one, that could be a pretty transparent operation. So we're testing a function. We go ahead and run the function, and either it succeeded or failed. Test failed. Let's see. Looks like we are assuming that we're going to set a global variable. And we're using the assert functions to go ahead and set that. That's fine. Some testing frameworks will make use of exceptions under the covers. I don't think we really want to make that happen in Lua. So we have our test runner, test complete, passed, and failed. Awesome. So, functions to test. Presumably, add test is doing that. Yep, add test is doing that. And we can see test is daylight saving time, start, stop, overlap, spring, and autumn. Awesome. So we can feel pretty good about our is DST start, stop, overlap working the way we're expecting it to because we've tested it in that way. Awesome. Now, how does this work? This is in time functions. So in time functions, I'm going to pop that open in an external comparison window. Okay, so we have ourselves a list of likely daylight saving time start and stop points in the US and in the Netherlands, on the theory that Netherlands is representative of the EU as a whole, which contains Germany and France, the primary countries for supported languages on this side of the ocean, and then the United States, specifically the place where the servers are hosted for the Eastern time zone for these. We have encoded these with start-stop just as day of the year. That's just a numerical value, starts at 1 and increments up to 365, 366, depending on the year. And that's what's in parentheses here after each one of these. And that gives a very easy way to do these comparisons. All right. We have some comments here to do. Account for the server time, logic time offset in setting in that. Great. So that is definitely a to-do there. Okay, I have a better understanding of what's going on here, I think. It feels kind of obvious to me that I have been away for several weeks on vacation. Okay. SDC start stop overlap seems tested. Did we have anything else? We have a pretty print date function. Don't think we care about that much. Where are we using that? You know what? I don't think that really deserves much testing, but we could test it if we wanted to. Get previous maze reset hour. Perfect. Let's go ahead and add some testing there, I think. So what we want is for this to take into account the settings, the local time offset. But what would be nice is if we could call this function with a value instead of having it look at a global variable. To make this easier to test, ideally this function can stand alone on its own just with whatever inputs that we pass to it, and then it returns a result. When it's looking at global variables like this, like settings account.local time offset, that makes it harder for us to do testing because then we have to manipulate that variable, then call this function, and then put that variable back if we didn't want to break it, because we're running this under the context of the plugin itself being loaded on my account with my settings. So to decouple those two, ideally we don't have this function looking at global variables. Now, do we have it looking at anything else settings-wise? Doesn't look like it. I'm going to just make that much wider. No, okay. So that would be a thing, is let's find all the places that call this. And what we want to do is go ahead and pass this in as a variable, original date and local time offset. And then in those places that are calling this, we'll go ahead and add that as a parameter. And now that means this function should be okay, just updating those comments. That means this function should be testable without dealing with that settings value. Is this the last thing in this that we want to test? Get days of month. Now, if we had any doubts about the logic in these functions like is leap year, get days in year, you know what, we'll revisit those. They're probably right. The logic is pretty straightforward, but they're also very easy to test. Get day difference, interesting. Number of whole days different. Where is that getting used? Right. Okay. Be good to add a test for that as well. We're going to start at the top though. So we're going to start with get previous maze reset hour. So function test get previous maze reset hour. And we're just going to start assuming we're going to have a single test at the moment. So we're going to add test this. Now, we can tell that that's going to do something. If we unload Festival Buddy and then load it in again, we can see get previous maze reset hour. That is called. And if we went ahead and said test failed equals true, in the body of that, that's how we can see that a test fails. We're going to see passed to failed 1. Awesome. Now, what are you doing? Okay. He's just messing up my chainmail. No particular reason. Just hear this metal scraping behind me. Yes, being a goof. Okay. So, what would be neat is if we could know ahead of running this function whether or not it was going to have failed and then color this line. That would be pretty cool. But that would involve queuing up outputs because we want any output that happens in that function be associated with it. And we're making use of the assert is true, assert is false kind of thing. So assert is true, false, false should be true. So what we're trying to do is instead of just marking test failed, we're trying to use assert functions to say we think this should be true, we think this should be false, and those messages will be or those functions can take care of doing the output. So we can see test get previous maze reset hour, assert failed, expected true but got false, false should be true. Not actually true, but you know, I needed a message. So that's our basic testing. Now we need to go ahead and call this function with various inputs that let us poke at the logic to make sure that it gives the correct answer in general, and then it gives the correct answer at edge cases. So just before what should be 10 o'clock, just after what should be 10 o'clock, exactly 10 o'clock. And also, is it paying attention to local time offset? So the first thing would be to pass it a local time offset of 0. Just test it without that, and then also test it with local time offset, going both positive and negative, doing fractional local time offsets if we want to be really thorough. So if it gets too complicated to do that in one function, we can break that up into a couple of different functions. But let's go ahead and write a couple lines of code here in the one function and see what we think of. This. So we need to pass a date. And we know in this original date, we are going to apparently just copy it over to this date so we can do some modifications. And we care about hour, minute, and second. So we're looking at date dot hour, minute, second. We also care about day and month and year and day of week, apparently. Do we actually care about day of week? Or are we doing it for thoroughness? Looks like we're doing it for thoroughness. Well, I appreciate that. Maybe at one point I was going to use that. Okay, so we need to have all of those things in mind. Do we know what this is? I'm not sure we do. Okay, so we can make a local date using a function. And it looks like we would like to pass day of weekend to fully test this. Day of week. So one of the nice things about Lua, nice is relative. One of the things about Lua is that it is not very strongly typed. So if you pass it a table that has the entries you're looking for to a function that is looking for those entries in a table, it doesn't know that you didn't pass a real thing from the LOTRO client of the actual date. It's just like, well, it's got all the things I was looking for, so it's good enough. And that way it kind of reminds me of a template in C++, where it's like, hey, this is a thing that has that it will have the things that you're trying to use. It'll have these functions, it'll have these members, but you don't actually have to care about the type. And compared to C# generic, sometimes you just want to pass it a thing that's going to have a dot year in there, and you just do not care what the underlying type is. It's fine. And so Lua has that, and I do appreciate that. Okay, so make local date. Where are these being used? These are being used in a number of places. And all those places they're not supplying the day of the week, and so that's just going to be 0 or nil. But those places, they're also not looking at the value, so it won't be a problem. Okay. So let's go ahead and local. Okay, what is this supposed to do? Returns the previous 10 o'clock version of this structure. So, basic test. Provide something after. Pass something after 10 o'clock local time. Expect 10 o'clock. So, whoops. Our local date, we're going to go ahead and make something. And this is just year, month, day, hour, minute. Oh, are we dealing with second? We are dealing with second. Ooh. Year, month, day, hour, minute. Okay. That makes me a little sad that I didn't think about second. So second, day of year, day of, yeah, okay. So all those places that are calling make local date already, those need to be passing a second. So year, month, day, hour, minute, and second. And in general, 0 is going to be fine for those. Instead of harassing her, Casper, you could come harass me. I know you're not going to, but you could.
You don't have food.
It's true, I don't have food, and that is why he's not harassing me. I see in the chat that we have 13 raiders from Task Pumpkin. Welcome! Today we are working on the Festival Buddy plugin for Lord of the Rings Online. If you like Lord of the Rings Online and or writing plugins in Lua, today is your lucky day. Well, most Tuesdays are. What we're doing right now is regretting some past choices of not including seconds in the signature of the make local date function that we're using to test things. For those who are not maybe familiar with it, in Lord of the Rings Online, there are festivals. There's also this plugin called Festival Buddy. Festival Buddy will give you some helpful information about how to complete quests, perhaps. For instance, Stuffing the Stuffed. Tells you where you can pick up the quest, where you can pick up the various items, and where you return the quest, and provides a helpful little map as well. So quite a fun fan of this one. But with the harvest math, there is some complication involved with the challenging wheat and cheat of the wheat mazes, with the what maze is it today question, which is based off of just incrementing each day after the previous one at 10 a.m. server time. The maze changes. As it says here, changes layout every day at 10 a.m. server time. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we are as close as we can be to correct, because harvest math tends to overlap with daylight saving time in at least one of the United States and or Europe and or both. And while I don't want to be those two specific, a lot of the player base is either in Europe or in the United States. And where possible, it'd be neat to take that into account. That actually does remind me of a thing that I meant to do. Add option to try and account for daylight saving time, US/EU only. That way we just will ignore that in the case of you're not in one of those two places. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go back to the testing. We now have a make local date, year, month, day, hour, minute, second, day of the year, and day of the week. What are we expecting for day of the week? I'm used to weeks starting on Monday, but I accept that that is not a universal thing. So let's come on in to Turbine Engine, I think. And we're looking at get date and day of year. Uncertain. Let's test it out. In the test runner, we're just going to go ahead and say local test equals turbine.engine.get date. And we're going to turbine.shell.writeLine date, day of week. And we're going to go ahead and concatenate test.day of week. That's all. Unload, reload. Well, that's not going to work. Yeah. That was just a basic syntax error. Okay. So we can see the date's day of the week for today is 3. 3, 2, 1. That would imply that Sunday is 1. Which is weird to me because Sunday is clearly a part of the week end, not the week begin. I don't know. I guess it's a circle thing. Okay. So what we can expect is... You know what? I'm just going to make a note here. Somewhere. Day of week. Note. Sunday equals 1. Saturday equals 7. For day of week, Sunday equals 1, and Saturday equals 7. Okay, that is brain twisting. Cool. Well, in that case, we can go ahead and make a legitimate date here, because if we go look at a date, January 1st, 2024 was in fact a Monday, so that should be 2. Okay. However, we want something after 10 a.m. local time. So that's year, month, day, hour. So we want, say, 11 minute, second. So we're just going to start, in fact, we're going to do 10:30. So what we would expect to get is a date back that is 2024 11/10/00. Rest of it doesn't matter, but 1/2. So let's go ahead and get a result. Local previous reset hour equals get previous reset hour, and we're going to pass the local date and we're going to pass 0 for the adjustment. We're just dealing with the base logic here, and then we can add on your local time zone daylight saving time offset later. All of that. Okay. So, what are we going to do? How do we test this? We can go ahead and use assert. And here, I think I want a new assert function, which is going to be function assert dates equal date A, date A, date B. And then what we're going to do is we're going to walk down all the members of that date. I don't know why someone is spamming me from that area code, but it is not for me. Okay. So, first question, what happens if we check if they're equal, they are table references, they are not equal. Is there an obvious way? Lua, compare two tables. How do you check if the two tables have the same stuff? You recursively equals. That's more complicated than what I want right now, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to check each of the members that we're expecting. And we know that is going to be this. Check. So if date A dot year does not equal date B dot year, and we can just use a straight up comparison here because we can expect these are all numbers. Then, but we already have asserts. So let's function assert is equal A, B, message. If A does not equal B, then, actually, A equals, that's fine, return end. And then test failed equals true, test fail right line, assert failed. Items are not equal. And we'll go ahead and attach that message. Cool. So, assert is equal date A dot year, date B dot year, and then a message. We'll go ahead and say date A dot year, we'll just do something simple like that. And then we want to do that for month, day, hour, minute, second, day of week, day of year, and is DST. Lots of copy paste here. Now this is where you could be a little bit more clever and you could wrap all this up into a loop, for instance. Instead of just having a comment here, I mean, we're going to start with this because we do want to kind of verify that the function works as is. But we're going to revisit that here shortly. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say assert dates equal local date. Oh wait, no, sorry. And here's where you might have a preference of, is one of these the expected one and one of these is the actual one. So let's see. What's the standard way of doing this? Expected first, actual after that. Okay, I can do that. Expected and date. Nope. Actual. Cool. So the expected that we think it should be is going to be exactly 10 o'clock on the same day. And the actual is the previous registered hour. Okay, so let's go ahead and see, does that even work? It did not. What is going on with that attempt to save? Oh, a local nil. Let's go ahead and... Wait, is that the only place we use this? Sure. Or 0. Cool. Okay. So we can see, we think that function is passing at the moment, which means we think those dates are equal. Now, how do we make sure that's true? Well, let's go ahead and break it intentionally. Let's give it, expected at second, and I think the message there is probably the opposite of what I wanted, which was these are not equal to. So we'll go ahead and replace those. And it might be nice to actually include that in the output. But before we do that, let's go ahead and see, can we parameterize this just a little bit? So local fields equals, and we want each of these, but we want to go ahead and surround these with quotes. And for that, to me, just seems like we're going to go ahead and do a multi-select here. So we'll go ahead and kill the and. I'll go ahead and multi-select that, and there we go. So local fields equals that. Just to demonstrate to myself that I remember how to do a looping code here, we can see we're iterating through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that gives us these things in the right order. Otherwise, iterating through a table with just pairs and not I pairs, you'll just get what seem like inconsistent orderings. And they're probably consistent under the table, probably using a hash, but easier for us if we see these things in the order that we're expecting. So we know we're getting these in the right one. Value is what we're looking for. And we can go ahead and hoist this up. And expected of value, actual of value, and then expected, I'll call message equals string dot format, expected dot I am not sure how to use the same value for multiple places, so we're just going to do some concatenation. So expected dot, oops, we want value here. Does not equal, and actually we'll go ahead and put in the actual value there. Does not equal actual dot, and again we need the value for which we will go ahead and put in actual value. Now, what we can see here is that this has gotten awkward. And so it might be easier to go ahead and say local expected value E equals expected value, local A equals actual value. Now, is this actually better? I'm not sure. But we could try to simplify that. So this is just for the log message. I'm not too worried about it. Okay, and then we can just kill the rest of this. And let's give that a try. Let's go ahead and iterate through that. Okay, so we can see there's a problem there. That's happening on line 44. Awesome, there's a concatenation problem. Let's see it work without the message. Great. So it is just the message. Expected dot value dot. Oh, we're concatenating a nil field. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and protect ourselves against nil values here, or try to. Let's see if that actually works. Hey, it's fine. Okay, so what we want to do is validate to ourselves that this is doing what we think it's doing by, again, just breaking it a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and change the seconds. Okay, expect second 1 does not equal actual dot second 0. Perfect. And then let's go ahead and break the minute. Okay, expect that minute does not equal actual dot minute. Fantastic. Going to make this a little bit wider so those fit on one line. Okay, let's go ahead and do the hour. Expect that hour does not equal actual dot hour, so that's pretty nifty. And then we can go ahead and just do the other fields real fast just to make sure that we're convinced. So day, this should be month. It is month. This should be year. It is. And we're getting meaningful error messages, so we don't have to guess what is broken. Now, these things might not actually matter for the logic, but we can see day of year as not matching. And then day of week is not matching. That is lovely. So that gives us a really snazzy way of saying these are the fields that we're looking for. We're iterating through each one of them, checking that they match in both of them. They might both be nil, but whatever they are, and we can then output a message that says, here's the field that we're looking at, here's the value in that field that we're looking at on both sides of these for a straightforward error message. So we can now use this function we built up, the assert dates equal, to move forward. So with that, we know at this point that we're going to have an error message if they are not equal. So what we want to do is test just before 10 a.m. local time. Expect the previous 10 a.m. So we're going to go ahead and do local date. And for this, we're going to go ahead and do January 2nd at 9:30, because I don't want to deal with rolling back to the previous year just yet. Now we do know that that is that value there, day of year, that should be 2, and that should be 3. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and grab that previous reset hour, and we're going to go ahead and assert that we actually get January 1st. And we apparently do. One of the downsides of bringing in unit tests after the fact is that the difference between a test that didn't actually test anything and a test that is successfully passing is often nothing. Whereas a failed test will get an output, a successful test, the whole point is to not get an output. So it can be a little bit disconcerting. So we can take a look at is time after reset, then return date. If we just go ahead and return date anyway, breaking the function, or not is time after reset, go ahead and break that function. Actually, the unary not might not work. It doesn't work. I would like it to work, but that doesn't mean it will. So if true. Awesome. So we can see that we got things are not equal. So we expected the day equals 1, it's actually 2. Day equals 2, it's actually 3. Okay, so multiple things didn't work. And that's because we skipped all this code down here that rolls things back. Okay, fantastic. So let's go ahead and everything's working. So by breaking the function that we're calling, we were able to confirm that if the logic of the function is different, this test does output some information. So that's good. One of the things that would be nice, perhaps, is a stack dump when there's a failure. That could be a little bit messy, given that right now the failure doesn't stop the processing. So each one of these 3 would have a failure. But in a lot of testing frameworks, you'll have a specific line that it's pointing at, like this assert right here on line 188. This is the thing that failed. And that's really useful in general, but in this specific application, because we're writing our tests one test at a time and we're checking them, I think we'll have limited utility for it. It's just a nice to have, pointing just there. And that is also a thing. In general, when you're doing more robust unit testing frameworks, your asserts will probably stop further processing because your check has failed, therefore any future checks are probably kind of meaningless or likely to fail as well. So anytime you see the word assert in a more robust environment, C#, C++ are ones I'm familiar with, you can expect that if that fails, you're done. That test function will abort, and then the next test function runs. Now, one way around that is just to have super granular tests, where we can have a separate function for this one than for this one. Because we're doing our own manual test registration here, though, that feels like a little bit of extra work. So we're gonna jam a bunch of them into the same function. But just know that's a way around it, is just whichever test function fails, that is the one test that failed because every test is in its own function. But it is not the only way out of this. Hey, Kato, you're using that bed. We had an extra round cat bed, and we were like, well, the cats aren't using it, and so we just shoved it under a chair, and now they're using it, which is great until we want to use the chair. Maybe they know that. Okay. So we want to test rolling back tests rolling back the day. Okay, we want to test rolling back the month and the year. Test rolling back the month. Test rolling back the year. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a month. To do that, we will do the first of a month that is not January. So we're going to go ahead and do February 1st at 9:30. Now we happen to know, if we look it up, that February 1st is a Thursday. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that is the 5th day of the week. Okay. Wacky. And we know day of the year, we know that's going to be the 32nd day of the year. So we have the previous one, and then we can go ahead and expect that this is going to be January 31st, 10 a.m., which is the 31st day of the year, and is a Wednesday, which is the 4th day of the week, if your week starts on Sunday. Okay, let's give it a shot. Now, we're expecting it should work, but it's nice to have these confirm. If we thought, oh no, that's going to roll itself back to the 30th, we can see, oh no, it's actually rolling it back to the 31st. Awesome. I am a little curious though. Turbine.engine get call stack. What are the options to that? Any. Okay, why are you taking parameters? Arguments. Okay, debug.traceback. Cool, Lua. What is debug.traceback? Uncertain. Okay. Oh, nice. Level parameter specifies what level the call stack to consider, with 1 being the call of debug traceback itself, 2 being... Okay, so you can exclude certain parts of the call stack as being too low level. Nice. So turbine.shell.writeline get call stack. Let's go ahead and look at that for a failure. And we'll do the same thing. We'll pretend that the day before February 1st is January 30th. Coming on in here, and we can see, and I actually think it's clearer if we go ahead and put the call stack afterward. And let's give it a color. But let's make it a different color than the actual error message, so that it's a little bit easier to call them out. What's, I don't know, orange. Orange text code. Sure, let's do that. It's probably going to be hard to read. Not that bad, actually. Okay. So we can see we are in assert is equal, assert dates equal in function value. 194. Is 194 useful? To know where we are? Well, yeah. Okay. So what we would like to do is be up more levels than we currently are. So let's go ahead and say get call stack 2 and see, does that bring us up to assert dates equal? Or is this parameter lying and we can't actually? Okay. I'm not convinced that that parameter is in fact useful. If we wanted to, we could build our own version of this that's cut out certain lines from the output. We split on new lines and then exclude some and package it back together. I don't think that's worth it for this particular project, but in a more robust framework, you would want to be able to just say, we don't care about this one, we don't care about that one, or maybe we do care about where we're failing, but the actual failure is on line 194. And the rest of that is why it's failing. So line 194, this line here, that's the failure point. But that brings us into assert date's equal, and that brings us into, assert is equal, and that brings us to the actual point where we're seeing this. I think what we've got here is fine. So let's go ahead and add it to the other assert functions, so that we just have it there. Okay. And it's not a part of assert date's equal because that is passing it off to assert is equal. But in the assert is equal, we do have that. So it's implicitly part of the assert date's equal. Okay. So we can see that we're still getting assert failed, items not equal, 3031, great. Come in here, oh, our test was wrong, or the code's wrong. One or the other, unload, reload. Do I have a reload ability somewhere in this? I do not. I could just load that. Okay. Let's see, plugins, load. Yeah, I could do that. I'm going to go ahead and do a shortcut, and that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 61 minus 12, 5149, and which can be slash plugins space load space quote. Nope, that didn't work. There's a way to deal with quotes. Is it double quotes? I just saw someone talking about how to do this. Perfect, okay. Well, I don't know about perfect. Okay, what I was just doing, and let's double check. There we go. Because the plugin I'm trying to load has spaces in the name, the way to encode that in a shortcut is to do slash shortcut space the number, this is number 49 here, space slash plugin space load space, and then you need to escape that double quote. So in this case, I have 3 double quotes. So quote, and then a double quote to embed that in there, I guess. And then the full name of the reloader, and then a trailing quote. And that's enough, apparently. So thanks to whoever was showing me that worked the other day. I think over on the plugins Discord, I'm sure you know who you are if that was you. It had not occurred to me that LOTRO had that level of double quote escaping for the shortcut command, but it's very useful to know that it can. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and use this button to do the reload if we remember to. But we can always just unload and then load. Let's see, if it is unloaded, still works. All right. Okay, so we want to roll back the year. So we're going to do the same thing. This is going to be January 1st at 9:30. This is the first day of the year. And we know January 1st is the second day of the week. Therefore, we want to expect that the previous one is the 31st day of December, 10 a.m., which was the 365th day and the third day of the week. First day of the week. Wait. December 31st was a Sunday, which in this system, Sunday is 1. Okay, yes. I'm so close to just declaring some constants where Sunday equals 1, Monday equals 2, because, I say I'm so close. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and do that. Because we're in time functions test, I feel like this is a fine place to say Sunday equals 1, Monday equals 2, Tuesday equals 3, Wednesday equals 4, Thursday equals 5, Friday equals 6, Saturday equals 7. Sure. That all seems plausible. And we're going to come on in here and say Monday. Monday is 2. Okay. Tuesday. Monday. 5 was Thursday. Wednesday, Sunday, Monday, and Sunday. Okay. Probably better that way. We'll give that a try. Okay, so what we're doing is we have a January 1st at 9:30, and so the question is, what was the previous 10 a.m. server reset time? And what we're expecting is you have to roll back to the previous year in order to get that. So that's the logic that we're testing here. And it seems correct because we can see that if we change that instead of December, if we have November, okay, awesome. We see November is not December, and we have the callback. Go ahead and put it to rights. If instead, if the date, okay, the actual date's wrong. So we can see that code is being executed, and then if everything is right, we just don't get an error message. So yes, as I was saying, that's the disconcerting part about backfilling unit tests for already existing code. Is normally you would write the test, it fails, you would write the code, the test passes, and you have that in syncness where you understand that the test is working because it started out not working. Apparently, I'm just gesticulating too wildly. Put that back. Okay. Well, let me know if it doesn't work anymore. Okay, so those are things that we're playing around with. So when you're writing a unit test to flesh out the functionality of a function like this, it's helpful to just go through and say, what is the function trying to do and how do we test it? Okay, local time offset, we're going to get to that. I think we'll probably break that out into its own function. So server local offset 0. And let's go ahead and update this. We'll just do the rest of that in their own. Okay, so does time match reset? Oh, we didn't test that. Pass in 10 the actual reset time. Expect the same back out. Okay. We're going to go ahead and copy this back up. Okay, so the local date, if we are actually passing in 10 o'clock, we expect to get that back out. And in that case, we can just compare local date and previous reset. Very cool. So we'll go ahead and do that. That works. And we can see the function rename is picked up, so we know that worked as well. Okay, does it match? And that's the case of hour, minute, second, matching, then return. Okay? Is time after the reset. Okay. After reset. And then before reset. Now, what we only checked one type of being after. So what I would like to do is go ahead and same minute, same hour, and same day. So this is the same hour, so it's going to go here. What we want for the same minute is we're going to go ahead and pass 30 seconds in instead of 30 minutes in. And then for the same day, we're going to go ahead and pass a different hour. All of it could be different, in fact. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and pass in 20 and 10 and 5. And what we're expecting is that regardless of how we are ahead that day, we get the same result regardless. And we do. Okay, before the reset. Oh yeah, so is after reset, that was the hour is after, or the hour is equal, and the minute is after, or the hour and the minute are the same, and the second is after. And all of those checked out. So we're done testing this part of it for local offset equals 0. It's after midnight the next day. Roll back time manually until we find a built-in function to do this. Yeah, pretty much. Same day. Just some visual dividers. Okay, and then okay, so we have the same day and we need the next day as well. So if it's after midnight on the next day, we want to roll back the time. So let's go ahead and add a next day, which is kind of the same as doing the before the reset. After reset, same day, and then before the... Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm confusing myself. So after the reset, time that day, and before reset, time that day. So for rolling back, we need to roll back the date by 1. And then if that hits the beginning of the month, we need to roll back the month. And if that hits the beginning of that, we need to roll back the year. And we're done with that logic. Cool. And that's all tested here. And then we were also checking the day of the week. So check that Sunday rolls back to Saturday. Okay, so the first Sunday of 2024 was the 7th. So let's go ahead and construct that. So this is the January 7 at 9:30, and we know that that was a Sunday, which is a 1. And what we're expecting is that this is going to roll back to January 6th, 10 a.m., and that is the 7th rolling back to the 6th, which is Saturday. Oh, and we also tested the date of the year as well. So we have day of week and day of year. So those are properly taken care of. I was very thorough with this, it would appear. Okay, and we can see that that works as well. So the rolling back a day of the week from Sunday to Saturday works. The rolling back of the day of the year from 1 to 365 works. And then we can just check that day of year rolls back to 366 for a leap year. So it's going to look the same as this, but into a year that was actually a leap year. So let's go ahead and roll back from the before the server reset on the January 1st, 2025 into 2024, which we should expect to be 366. However, the day of the week I think is going to be wrong. So December, it looks like January 1st of next year, which is 3 weeks away, what on earth, is going to be on Wednesday. And we're going to roll back to a Tuesday. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I think there's hobbiting happening over on Laurelin, but it really looked like a cutscene from one of the games, because they just got a whole bunch of hobbits lined up. Most of them in blue outfits. It looks very much like the opening of the, I don't know, the High Elves or something, where they're all lined up for battle. But I think they're in Bywater?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, they're at the Farmers Fair location. Okay.
We're all trying to synchronize power.
All right. Good luck to the hobbits over on Laurelin. You're looking very, very organized over there. Okay. So we're going to come on in. We can see everything loads up, which means we are respecting the leap year of that logic. And that's the entire function. So we have something that, roughly speaking, exercises all of the parts of this function that we think should do something. So get previous maze reset hour when the local time offset is 0, all that's working great. So what we want to do now is go ahead and test with local offset not 0. So how do we do that? What we're looking for, and sometimes the easy way to kind of work through what we're looking for is writing the actual code. So function test get previous maze reset hour local offset 6. Is it 6? Is it -6? Let's come on in here into the options, detect. We are at +6. That makes sense. Okay. Awesome. So we can see local offset 6. That is doing great. Okay. Opening this up, we want to go ahead and start with the basics. We're expecting, we're passing in that offset of 6. We can look at fractional offsets in a little bit. We're just going to say we're in the Netherlands. We have an offset of 6 most of the time. And we're going to come on in, make local date. What we're expecting is if we made this of January 1st, 16, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that we're going to get out that same value. Let's test that. Why did I get date day of week? What's going on? Oh, of course. I never killed that. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay. Let's go ahead and double check that that code is working. Okay, we got the failure. Day of year 1 is not equal. Yep, that makes sense. Compound failure there. Okay, so yes, if the offset is 6, then we should expect that. Now, what I want to do is a restricted version of the testing. I don't feel the need to do all of the same, all of these again. We're just going to test a couple of these. So we're going to do the one that's significantly after. And again, we're passing in 6 for that offset. And we're expecting back 16. We want before reset time that day. And we're going to go ahead and make it a little bit more complicated. Toss in some seconds there. And we should still expect all of that. Awesome. And let's just go ahead and roll back to the previous year, because that'll test a lot. Okay, so this is going in for an offset of 6, and we should expect 16 there. All right, let's give that a try. Okay, we can see that there's a failure because I probably failed to hit the offset on that one. Perfect. Okay, so sometimes you're catching that you wrote the test wrong, and sometimes the test is catching that you wrote the code wrong. But in this case, we can see that getting the previous maze reset hour, if you pass in that local time offset, that is working. And you know what? Let's just do a fractional one here as well. Function. We're going to go ahead and take that and all of that. Local offset fractional. Great. And here, we're going to go ahead and pass in 6.25. And just for kicks, I'm going to leave it wrong. And we can see, absolutely. What we actually needed was for this to be 615, or 1615, sorry, or more. Here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with something easier. We're going to do a same day test. Okay, make local date. This is well past it. Okay. And we're doing a 6.25. So what I'm expecting is quarter after 4. Let's check that. Of course. We're not taking that into account. Do we think we should? Alright, to do account for the server, time, local time, and local time offset. That is done. time zones that aren't a whole hour off from the server. Account for fractional time zones. That is what is currently missing. But this is how we do it. Okay, so let's start with that one. So we're going to do 6.25. And we could make our life a little bit easier. Local offset equals 0. If we would just, actually stop using magic variables. Okay. Local offset equals 6. Local offset equals 6.25. Offset. Very cool. Okay, so we are passing in 16, 15, and we need to get that back out. And we are failing to. So what we want to do is we need our local to be a whole number. So we need Lua's Lua math.floor. Tell me more about this. Okay. So what we actually need is local time offset hour equals local time offset math.floor of local time offset, and then local time offset minute equals. We need to go ahead and do local time offset minus local time offset hour times 60. Yeah, let's give that a shot. Okay, not yet. Of course, we didn't actually change to using that. Let's get some output here. So we know what we're talking about. And we don't want this for every single test. So if local time offset does not equal local time offset hour, then tell me this stuff. Hey, Casper. Oh, and now it's going to start working? Really? Well, it did make this change. Okay. We're going to comment that out for a minute. Come back in here. Great. So we're going to work on the assumption that while we know that there are fractional time zones out there, we believe that they are in the form of 15-minute chunks. And while there could be exceptions, there aren't any that I know of at the moment. So this is certainly granular enough for this particular plugin. But it could be that for some use cases that more granularity is necessary. However, in that situation, you should definitely use a commercial library that's out there, like Notatime, Jotatime, whatever, that encapsulates these rules and these ideas in a way that I don't think is available in Lua at the moment without pulling in some code that does it like this. So we're working through this exercise because it's kind of fun. It gives us a chance to see what does it take to do this. But in production code, you should not do this. You should rely on an actual third-party library that knows what they're doing. So this is fun and interesting, all of that. But don't take this as a sign that you should do this in your day-to-day life if you are a software engineer, unless your job is writing the library that everyone else uses for this information. So there's your public service announcement for today. We're going to go ahead and incorporate a few more of these tests, possibly all of them, but at least a couple of them. So same day, after reset time. So okay, that one's good. Before reset time, we'll go ahead and check the more complicated one, which rolls back the year and rolls into a leap year. So that one goes to 1615. There we go. Okay, so we have, through the magic power of unit tests, made changes to support fractional time zones, and I've convinced myself that I haven't broken anything in the meantime because we already had tests that tested everything else in here. And if I had accidentally said that this value was going to be times 61, actually, I don't think that would... Yep, okay. We can see that that gives the wrong value in at least one place, in a bunch of places, or not 60, but +1, if I'd added a +1 in there. We can see again, expected 0 got 1, a bunch of places it was wrong, so many places. So because none of those pre-existing tests broke, despite the fact that I was messing with some code that I wasn't 100% sure that what I was doing was correct, I was confident that I didn't break any existing functionality because we had tests for all of that. And those tests still work. So this is the magic power of unit tests. While they're not a while they are not a silver bullet for writing code, they are super duper useful for verifying that whatever change you made to the code was isolated to the parts you wanted to and didn't have any knock-on effects that you weren't expecting. And that's just super powerful. So despite the fact that this function is doing a lot, I am confident that it still does what it wants to do. And we have accounted for fractional time zones. Duplicate the past in date so we can modify it as needed. Cool. Just add a little description of what we're doing there. Okay. So, thank you. Unit tests, you always make things easier unless you don't. In fact, we're doing really well here. Let's go ahead and make some commits. Added additional tests for time functions. So that's good. This is the call stack and some more functions and all that. Yes, awesome. And all of these things are great. here's where we're passing that parameter. Here's where we're passing that parameter. Okay, here's that. There's this. Add that comment. Awesome. Where is that being used? SDT start stop overlap. Okay, that is only being used in the options when. Okay. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. Options when itself. That's when you're in here and you hit the detect button. Is probably Europe is true, is probably DST overlap is false. Awesome. Those things are great. So we do not want to commit these. Offset hours 6. Where is that? Also there. Don't want that. Okay, that is great. Let's go ahead and take into account plausible DST overlaps. Okay. We do want to comment out that function. We no longer want to return there. And we do want that. Yeah, we'll take it all. Okay. So we're including some of these commented out parts because, this is probably going to require some look someday. Now, I think we've already gotten some functions that relied on this checked in, so that's a bit of an oopsie, but no biggie in this case. Okay, so we have a pretty clean working directory. We have a few commented out debug statements. Awesome. Okay, coming out of there, we're going back to time functions. We just did, well, hang on a sec, we have SDC start stop overlap, great. Get previous and May's reset hour, awesome. Get days of month, I don't think I'm going to bother to unit test that, but one could. Get days in year, same thing. I'm just not going to bother. We have kind of implicitly tested this by seeing what happens when you back out of January 1st into a leap year and a non-leap year. Not every leap year and non-leap year, of course, but one example of each. So is leap year and get days in year, that seems to be functioning pretty good. Really? The number of days in a given year. Okay. Is leap year. Same basic thing. Could test it, but it is being implicitly tested, and that's working. Get day difference. The number of whole days difference between the two dates. I'm uncertain what the usage of this is. Let's go take a look. Okay, we're passing in a reset hour, where this isn't two arbitrary things. So I do not remember why I was storing this in a Dutch variable, but that is hilarious. Bims asks, or says, nice attention to detail, thank you very much. Curious if you feel, since you've been working with the old LOTRO API for a good while, they'd be a suitable person to add to the API documentation itself. Yes and no. I think the places where I feel most comfortable are the places I use the most, and those tend to be the more usual. I did it again. Those tend to be the more usual places that you do things. Making a button, making things move on the screen, responding to clicks, all of these things. And while the API documentation could certainly benefit from more examples overall, and more just general ideas of, hey, what is the structure when you have a callback on this particular thing? I think it could always use more fleshing out with those things, and I would feel very comfortable there. But where there's most value, I think, in fleshing out the documentation is in those places that are less commonly used, more edge cases, actual bugs in the system, or apparent bugs in the system. There was just a discussion over on a Discord server for plugin authors, talking about the limitations or the bugginess, the apparent bugginess of an effect list for a target that is not the player. Your own effect list, what effects are on you when they're being added and removed. That seems pretty stable, pretty much does what you expect it to do. But the effect list on a target, maybe not so much. So if you add a bleed, if a bleed removes a damage over time effect, whatever, plugins don't necessarily have 100% accurate information there. And so knowing where these things don't always work is valuable information, but oftentimes they appear in places that I'm not in as much because, those are maybe more specialized function calls, or they just don't appear very often for what I'm doing. So I rarely have the desire to deal with an enemy's effect list, so I just didn't have that in my head that didn't work as reliably as the player's effect list. So, I mean, yes and no. Like in a wiki format where I could go and add things and other people could correct them if they're wrong or have problems, yeah, could definitely be fleshed out more than it is. But would they be useful additions for other plugin developers, or maybe just more useful for people who need more help getting kind of bootstrapped into doing plugins in general? That's a question for someone else, perhaps. So, yeah, I mean, the real problem, the real limitation for me, as always, is time. I don't have nearly as much time as I would like for the plugin development in general, let alone other side activities that could consume so much time if I let it. Bim says, definitely agree. I usually start out with an idea for a plugin, but then get tired of working with the API and some kind words. That one of the things I tend to do more than anything else is if I think I want to do a thing. For instance, I want to have a button that has an alias for /server time that you click it, and then we know we can parse the server time and compare that to the local time and figure out how many hours offset you are from the server time. Awesome. How do I do that? Well, for starters, I know the Reminders plugin has this capability. I don't necessarily want to implement it the same way that ThoroughLore did, but I know ThoroughLore has, this is a solved problem, right? Not solved by me, but it's a solved problem. Let's go see how Reminders did it. And so I was definitely inspired with how Reminders did it, and I included some of it, but not all of it, and made some tweaks to make it a little bit more Festival Buddy-esque. So for instance, the way buttons look in Festival Buddy, the way you do aliases in Festival Buddy, it's just different than the Reminders did it. And I wanted to make sure this detect button looked like these emote buttons. So definitely taking inspiration with how Reminders did it, but making sure I integrated it into Festival Buddy in a way that was more familiar to how Festival Buddy works. Whether or not how Festival Buddy works is good, I think consistency is more valuable than correctness in terms of what a button looks like. So those buttons don't look exactly like the built-in buttons, but they're fine, and it's consistent. So yeah, when I think something can be done, my first step is to say, has anyone else solved this problem or something similar to this problem? Because there's a lot of plugins out there, and I have experience with a few of them. There's certainly more out there. And so in that sense, working plugin code is far more valuable than documentation, which may or may not capture all of the edge cases. So if I can look at code that's actually working and try to hoist that into the plugin that I'm working on, and then just sort out the minor differences in convention or whatnot, that is at least as valuable than a documentation that says, here's how to do the thing in isolation. Okay, Bim says, yep, makes sense. Was thinking of redoing all the backpack icons in higher resolution and taking inspiration from HugeBag to update it. Nice. And then says, you won't keep spamming me. That's what we're here for, is to have conversations in and around actual writing of code. So totally not a problem. I appreciate you mentioning things. When you say redoing the backpack icons, are you talking about the icons that show up when you look at the icons down here at the bottom versus up here? One of the things I like is that, well, you can implement a bag in plugin, and you can tell the game, this is the bag instead of the built-in bag. And I think that's really cool that you can replace that in an authorized way. I do appreciate you can just have an all bag with the stock in-game system. You can just say, drag all of these clumps of 5 into a single bag, and you're done. Now, I tend to run with prime bags. I think that's what it is, prime bags, because I really like being able to make the bags in bags, where you can say, I want all of these things to appear in a thing that is labeled this, and that is a separate mini bag from everything else. It all shows up in one window, but you can do a little bit more organized than this. Because one of the biggest problems I was having, because I ran with this for a long time, just an all bag, and it got bigger and bigger, and now it's as big as it can be within the game. And my biggest problem is that there are things in here which are kind of my base loadout that I do not want to accidentally get rid of. And just calling it out right here, healing legendary items and foods. So you got the Bjorning honey cakes, but also, where are the other foods? I know they're in here somewhere. There we go. Some food there, and some food there, and there's some stew somewhere. But this is sort of my point, is that all of the things that are kind of my standard loadout. Oh, hope token, yep. And also the scrolls, also the healing potion and power potion. And I'm still missing that stew or some other food. And the drum, gotta have the drum. And my subscriber town services. And I couldn't tell you if there was someone else in there that's part of my basic. Alternate instruments, and Wild Root Whistle, gotta have that. Oh, I am out of it. No wonder. 7-star stew. Well, let's go get some more of that while we're thinking about it. Great. And let's lock that. And while we're at it, spear beans. Yep. Let's go ahead and fill that up. Feast of Honorian. Fantastic. Okay, so everything on this top row here is part of my standard loadout. And so what I would do, plug in compendium. Let's go ahead and grab that. I'm just going to go ahead and install it right now, so anyone who is curious can follow along. We'll go ahead and install Prime plugin. This won't have my full configuration of how I want my bags to look, but it'll be fine. Go ahead and refresh, and in fact, I'm going to unload Festival Buddy and load in Prime Bags. So Prime Bags is a bag replacement plugin. It does take a moment to load up, especially the first time. And by default, it'll try to sort things into appropriate categories. I don't always like the categories, but a lot of them are fine. And so the first thing I do when I come into Prime Bags is come into the setup, and I want to set a minimum size of 1 for all. And that's a me thing, and we can get into why if anyone is curious. But in general, so categories, we're going to make a new category, and we're going to call it base. And this field needs to not be multi-line, but that's okay. Rollo. And so I click on the category, and then I'm going to start dropping things here that are part of my base loadout. So that's FLS, this, my drum, yes, wilder whistle, and then, oh yeah, a lot of the consumables. I do not want to think about these things. I want to just ignore them. They're there, and that's great. So when you close your options, the plugin will just reload, does a full reload, and then when we come on in here, there we go, we can see those items are segregated off into a thing called base. Oh, you know what? I'm not done, because I always have my portents. Wait a second. Oh, just not usable mounted. Phew, not time to swap those out. Of my class items, so improved string, okay, that's great. And my instrument, that's actually a healing instrument. So let's actually make a new category called healing. That's still a multi-line control. I'm going to click on in here, and we're going to put these legendary items plus my alternate instrument in there. Awesome. Close that. Takes a minute to reload. I'm not sure what's going on in there. I wonder if there's a get attributes in there or something. Actually, might be. Okay, so now we can see we have a base, and I have mentally trained myself to just ignore anything that's in base, doesn't matter. And then we have a healing thing. So when I need to swap out to my healing gear, and some of these things in here are probably also for healing, like this thing that gives, nope, not that one. Plus chance on healing, great, probably that. This thing, plus chance on healing. These two are probably going to be showing up in my healing bucket on my actual loadout. But the point is, I put them in there and then I can forget about them. So it's time for me to switch to my healing one. Well, I can pre-set up DPS. And for this, we're going to go ahead and drag this in there, and my drum. Awesome. So no, they're not even in my inventory yet. They're in my character screen. But what that means is I can come in here and say, okay, I'm going to swap out this and this and this. And we can see the items that came off of my character screen are automatically sorted into a DPS bucket. It's named whatever I want it to, but that's clear for me. And that means I do not lose my items. And it's super fast for me to switch out. Wherever they are in my conceptual actual inventory. And if you unload Prime Bags, you can see they're wherever. But you load Prime Bags back in, and it is categorizing these things without like moving them around in your all bag. And then it's just super easy to go back to being in DPS mode versus healing mode. So if you're doing any kind of equipment swaps and they have distinct names to them, and that's probably the case, and Abimskala says, liking Prime bags cannot resize icons. I looked into this once. I looked into just the scaling up the window, and something went wonky with that. So by default, no, there's no option in here to increase the size of the window. And it might be possible to do it, but it is not like a one-line change, or if it is a one-line change, I did not find that one bag. Okay, so you say huge bag says it. That's awesome. So it sounds like it is possible to do it. I think the problem is it's probably each one of these individual items that needs to be scaled up instead of just like the whole window. And that was going to take more than the 5 seconds I was paying attention to it that day. So I think the answer is yes, it could be made to do it, but no, out of the box it does not currently do it. But Rollo, the developer of Prime plugins, is actively making changes to other parts of Prime, but Prime is targeted towards endgame raiders. And the Prime bags, I think, is not really the focus of his development. So it wouldn't surprise me if a plugin developer out there, made here's the 5 lines to change to make it scalable. I think it would be incorporated into the main line. It's still under active development, just maybe is not something that Rollo's going to get to anytime soon. Of course, my subscriber time and services. That definitely goes into base because I always want it and I never want to think about it. Okay, so that's a thing that really was a game changer for me for bag management. It's just all those things that I'm going to have with me as part of my general loadout, but I don't want to think about. They go into base. Anything that's part of a different spec, so healing versus DPS, I can make buckets for those so I don't lose track of them, and just define other buckets as needed. So for instance, with delvings, if you are a delvings person, you know that after each successful delving, you get an expirable chest that after 1 hour will vaporize, leaving you in a puddle of sadness. And so I have a category called Open Me Now! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And then each of the delving chest rewards, 1 through 12, just has been dragged in there. And so Prime bags, whenever I open it, if there's a category called Open Me Now!, I know, hey, I should go open that. And I find that incredibly useful because even with that, I will sometimes have those things vaporize on me. But if I happen to open my inventory, I will see it and I will do something about it. And so it's just that extra reminder where the icon itself maybe doesn't kick off that thought process. The actual words, Open Me Now, that's enough for me to key into it. So give it a try. I ran through it really fast, but there's a gotcha in here. I don't know about gotcha. There's a thing in here. Prime bags by default has what it calls a minimum capacity, and if you do not have that, at least X number of items for a sub bag, it'll just throw them into a miscellaneous bag. Or something like that. And I don't like that. If it's a quest item and there's only one of them, I still want it to show up in quest items. For me, the minimum is always 1. If there's at least one thing, it deserves its own sub-bag. But you could imagine where other people might think that's not true. So if we set the minimum to be 5, and we'll go ahead and restart that, those 2 barter tokens and some other things ended up in a miscellaneous bucket. Your mileage may vary. For me, that's infuriating, but you may find it a useful thing. I like things to be in their buckets regardless of how big those buckets are, and if I don't like the fact that there's a single thing in that bucket, I'm going to go deal with it and put it into shared storage or send it off to whatever character needs it. And that's my solution. Okay, so there's a miscellaneous bucket, and it just added the 2 barter items as well. And so you could imagine if there was another bucket that had 2 things in it, those would have ended up in miscellaneous as well. And eventually miscellaneous just gets really large. And that doesn't work for me. It might work for you. Anyway, that is Prime bags. Great question. Thanks for getting me started on it. I, in general, really like Prime bags. It does have a few gotchas. There is a button just underneath the title bar here, which I have been told takes off all your equipment, and which is, I guess, useful for equipment swaps. I don't want to take off all of my equipment. I think that would be not helpful. So I try not to click that button. But right next to it is a super useful button that I use all the time. When I am running around with Little Redhead, we will frequently have a thing where she will just pass me all of her stuff to sort and distribute later on. And so because we're running together, we often have identical lists of loot. We'll have the same drops of wood and leather and scholar materials and task items and all of that. And so this button just goes through and attempts to combine all of your stacks into smaller stacks. It's the little bag icon here. So we can see here I've got 4 stacks of jeweled sword sheaths. In fact, I'm going to make some more stacks here. They can condense down to 2 stacks. They came from 2 stacks. There's 100 of them in total. And you can imagine after adventuring for a while, maybe with multiple people, or doing this trade multiple times where she gives me stuff and then an hour or 2 later she gives me some more stuff, my inventory might look like this, very fragmented, and suddenly I'm running out of room. So Ghosty says, the B4 carry-all. Exactly, that it works great. But you hit this little button here, and it just says, oh, okay, we're going to stack that all together, and if you need to, you hit it a couple of times because it kind of was like, oh, I've run out of options here. And we can see those 8 stacks just got condensed down to 2 with a click of a couple buttons. And across dozens of items, crafting materials of all sorts, task items, whatever else, the freedom to be like, oh, okay, you've traded me a bunch of stuff and I have 2 inventory spaces left. And I click this a couple of times and suddenly I have 50 inventory spaces left. That's pretty cool. I'm a big fan. So, if nothing else, that button right next to the danger don't press this button, which if I was making any changes to Prime bags, I would get rid of that one. Or maybe just make these easier to see, I don't know. So, beware of the button on the left, use the button in the middle a lot, and I think this button does some sort of rotation. I'm not sure. Yep, I don't know what that was supposed to have done. Oh, that may just be a reload the plugin button, which that's fair. If you just anytime you open the options and then close the options, it'll reload the plugin anyway. Baz says that no, Baz, I was talking about the button just to the right of the stack items button, which I think is a reload the plugin button. Yeah, you got it. Okay, so reload stack items, and I think take off all of your equipment, which I've never pressed because I've never been in a position where I wanted to sort out which equipment was mine versus all the other equipment in my inventory. But one of these days I should do that. Or better yet, hide it so I don't accidentally press it. And all of these buttons are slightly overlapped with the title bar, so you have to click the bottom half of them to make them work. So, Beth says, that button is just for me. I know everyone that just likes it. Hey, if I was, I don't know. I would say if I was a person who is swapping items, but I really don't think that's true. Like I was demonstrating earlier, if I have a bucket of healing items and a bucket of DPS items, and I need to switch to healing, I will just click through the items that are in healing until they are all gone. And at the same point, the DPS ones are coming out into the DPS bucket. So if there is no healing bucket in my Prime bags, then I am done switching my equipment. So I don't actually know what the use case is of the take off all my clothes button. So in the few minutes we have remaining here, if you have ideas on why that button is useful, okay, so you use it so you can send your armor to your alts. Fair enough. That is not a use case that I have considered. You cannot mail equipped items. Okay. Okay, delving equipment is bound to account. I didn't think about that. Whereas some of these are bound to character. Yeah, okay. So Fair enough. I had not considered the use case of mailing equipment back and forth, probably because over half my equipment is bound to this character. But for those items, especially delving items that are bound to account, sure, you don't want to have to mail those or earn those more than once. I could see that. Yeah, I feel like that button deserves an option somewhere that says enable the take off all your equipment button. Or at least if you click it a second time, it puts it all back on. But maybe that's just me. I have so far avoided ever clicking it, so something's going right in my life. But now that I say that, I am tempting fate. But I do need to go into it and just disable that button because I do not have that use case. I only have one main character over on Treebeard, and any of my other kind of alt mains, which I do have. I've got my minstrel, but I also have alts for mostly for crafting, but a guardian and a hunter and a Bjorning, and they do not share the same equipment palette as my minstrel, so I don't think that would be a useful thing. Beth says, for sure, the plugin could use some work, especially the options, but like it works at the moment. Yeah, exactly. I don't think when you think of end game raiders and prime bag, like I'm sure some of the end game raiders use prime bags, but I don't think that's the whole point of the prime suite. I'm just grateful that there is something in there that I do enjoy because the rest of these I'm sure are very useful, but I have loaded them up a couple of times and that's it. And prime bags use all the time. Actually, now that I think about it, I am curious why Prime Bags has a bit of a loading delay, and I'm curious if it's at any point calling get attributes, because we've been seeing that get attributes is introducing a delay, an unexpected delay. So I'm going to open the folder, and I'm going to go to Documents and Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, Prime Plugins. Wallet bar. Oh, get money components. Yeah. Is there an option to not show the money? Member of enchantment. Mark medallion. No, there's not an option. Add currency. Ooh. That's pretty cool, though. Okay. That says they're not really geared towards endgame raiders, mostly geared towards adjusting your AI. Okay, fair enough. It's a misconception I have in my head. I am curious, though, if the loading delay is just related to get attributes, because where is wallet bar used? Probably in other places, but... Oh, that's exciting. Because I do not use the money components there at all. And I do load prime bags all the time. Okay. So, hey, anyone who isn't already aware, for whatever reason, calls to get attributes, the first time you call get attributes in your plugin, you're suffering a 4 to 6 second delay between the call of that and the return of that, and that seems to be a blocking thing. So the UI of the whole game kind of pauses while that resolves. So if you do not need get attributes, consider not calling it, or not calling it until a player requests it. So if they press the button like load data, then they're opting into it. But if you call that when the plugin loads, and we can see that that delay right here. So if I load prime bags, it takes maybe less than a second, 1,000, yeah, maybe half a second. But as soon as we go ahead and restore these calls, and I think only one of them really matters, but I'm not sure which one actually gets called. Go ahead and unload, and 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, 1,006, about a 6-second delay due to this call to get attributes. And I was associating it with the call, with the subcall get vocation, because that was where I was seeing it in dtracker, I think. And I was never calling get attributes except for get vocation, so I just like, hey, it's get vocation, but it's actually the get attributes call. For whatever reason, the first time you call this, large delay. Subsequent calls do not seem to have the same delay, but I have not tested it very rigorously. So, yeah, if you do not need it, I definitely encourage making it optional. And if you do need it, I don't have a good solution for that, actually, because like if you need it, then yeah, you're gonna suffer that penalty once, and the question is just, do you do it when the plugin is loaded, or do you do it some other time and the client just kind of freezes for 5 seconds while it resolves? Don't know, but I do know that since I do not use that money view, I'm going to be commenting that out of my local version of Prime Bags, because that's going to make a big difference. Yeah. I should go update the forum post that I made about that too, so that it's get attributes, not get vocation. Okay. Well, hey, we've hit 2 hours here. We've made some really good progress. Yule is coming, and I think Festival Buddy is going to be ready for it. I'm super curious why I was writing this in Dutch. This variable name, not sure why I did that. To do, maybe change this to English question mark, or all the way Dutch. I mean, not sure why I started with stored and then went to Dutch, but hey, it was probably on video here, so maybe we could find out. So there's still a question about what's going on with this last time function. I think we could add some more testing there. And with Yule coming out, we're going to have some updated items for the barter item list. And I am curious now, how's the barter list look for Yule? Awesome. It looks like we do have... we're making use of those headers in a way that I forgot to do for Harvest Math. Yeah. Awesome. I think we started that with Yule. So we're come full circle. Cool. So, I think we're going to wrap things up here. So if you have anything really fast to type in the chat, now's a great time to get it in there. And otherwise, we'll get to it next week. We are heading into Yule, like I said, so next week, if we're able to, we'll be updating the barter item list and then double checking that everything else still works pretty good, and then do a release. If these unit tests aren't finished in the week off screen, we'll go ahead and finish that there as well. And then I think I have a desire to circle back around to the Titan Bar plugin and finish the changes there so that we can have a wallet that lets you add anything. Similar to what we saw with the Prime Bags, where it just said, hey, pick something from your actual wallet, which is pretty cool. Sigosi says some kind words. Well, I'm glad you were here watching along. Yeah, so once we finish up Titan Bar, I really have been wanting to circle back around to making some improvements to the deed tracker plugin. I know there's a lot of people who have sent me reports of, oh, these deeds, my character has completed them, but they're not in here. I have ideas of that. I have ideas for restructuring how we add deeds so that it's more streamlined. So many ideas, so little time. So 2025 is going to be a time to get to that, I hope. Neat. Okay. And yes, Yule starts on Thursday, so if you are a Yule fan, you are in luck. All right. Where are my notes? Yep, that's it. Okay. That's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins and, in specific, unit testing. Unit testing is just my jam. I love it. I do hope to see you here next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.